Can you hear me now? Good morning. Long ago, in an elementary school, not so very far away, I was in the 4th grade in Coos Bay, and it was a Friday in September, and the entire class was lined up with our backs against the walls, ready for our weekly classroom spelling bee. If you spelled your word correctly, you kept your place in the line. If you made a mistake, you took the walk of shame all the way to the bottom. You want to motivate 25 kids to study their spelling words and engage in rote memorization? You make it a competition. I'm sure some of the kids found it stressful and demoralizing, but I loved it. As a voracious reader with a pretty good visual memory, I had a natural advantage, so I quickly worked my way to the top of the line and then fought tooth and nail to remain there. Every Friday was spelling bee day, and come hell or high water, I was there to maintain my position in the line. I could be burning up with a fever, and if it was a Friday, I was going to school. If I made a mistake, which I did a couple of times, I trudged to the end of the line, and then over the next few weeks, fought my way to the top again. The seeds of spelling savagery had been sown. Fast forward 4 years. It's March of 1978, and I am in the 8th grade. My family has just moved from Oregon to a small town in California. It's March. It's mid-year. That's a horrible time to move. But in middle school, it's the worst. So on my first day in a new school, surrounded by curious strangers, wanting nothing more than to just sink into that floor and disappear, my new English teacher announced that today was their classroom spelling bee. And it was not just any spelling bee, it was the one that qualified you to participate in the school bee the following week. And the winner of the school bee was going to go to the county bee, and the county bee winner was going to go to the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The old spelling savagery welled up. Oh! But the last thing I wanted to do that day was invite more scrutiny or, God forbid, make a mistake in front of all of those new kids. So when the teacher asked me if I wanted to participate, I declined. And then what followed was the most exquisite torture. I sat there and watched while I knew every single word, including the winning word in that classroom bee. And then the following week at the assembly where the school bee took place, I knew every single word again. And I burned with yearning for the glory that might have been mine if I'd had the guts to get in the arena and compete that day. Unbeknownst to me, I kind of carried that with me for a long time. Fast forward 29 years. My son is 11 years old. We have just watched a movie called Aquila and the Bee. It's the story of a little girl from South Los Angeles who toils away on her own and eventually wins co-championship of the National Spelling Bee. It's not particularly realistic. But I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because my son watched that and then became consumed with the desire to participate in a spelling bee. He started studying immediately. That first year, we didn't have any idea what we were doing. I didn't realize how much the spelling bee had changed in the 30 years since I had seen my last bee. The winning word in the year of 1978, when I didn't participate, was deification. By today's standards, that is a laughably easy word. The winning words in the 6 years preceding when my son started competing were prospicience, pococuranti, autochthonous, appoggiatura, ursprache, and seraphine. These aren't words that you learn from reading books and newspapers. He needed help. So let's skip forward to a year later, March 2008. My son has just competed in and won his first spelling bee. He's now the champion of the Western District of New Providence in the Bahamas. And that qualified him to become the first homeschooled student to compete in the Bahamas National Bee. Everybody at the National Bee in the Bahamas thinks it's actually a disadvantage that he's homeschooled. Little do they know. They are shocked when he places third in the National Bee. Part of his prize for becoming the third place winner was an all-expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C. to watch the Bahamian champion compete in the Scripps National Bee. We were sitting in the audience of the finals for the Scripps National Bee when my son turned to me and said, "I want to do this." Right. In that moment, the old spelling savagery welled up, and rabid spelling bee mom was born. We left the Bahamas, not because of the spelling bee, we were done there, and moved back to Portland. We made hundreds of word lists that year, which I entered into a spelling program that my son used to drill words. I became an expert at reading the diacritical marks in Webster's Third New International Dictionary, the official dictionary of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. And over the next 2 years, I made voice recordings for definitions and pronunciations for over 30,000 words. I have no idea how many hours it took, but it was a full-time job. Every Monday night, we went to the adult spelling bees at Mississippi Pizza in North Portland, which my son often won, and I sometimes won. And even though we were practically eating and breathing spelling, that year was fun. My son's desire to study spelling was still completely intrinsically motivated. Nobody was forcing him to spell. There was no external expectation of how well he would do at a competition. He was doing it because he wanted to. My son won the 2009 Portland Regional Spelling Bee, and the sponsor then sent him back to the Scripps National Spelling Bee. And he ended up getting into the semifinals that first year and placing 17th overall. He was extremely happy with his performance. And he vowed to study even harder the next year because it was going to be his final year of eligibility. He was going to be an 8th grader. He started studying as soon as we got home from Washington. Thus began the most unhealthy year of our lives. We both sat in front of our computers for hours every day, me recording words and him drilling them. Not enough exercise, too much fast food, and stress all combined to pack on the pounds. My blood pressure and cholesterol levels shot up. By March of 2010, after winning the Portland Regional Bee for the second time, my son was burnt out on spelling. In fact, he had a new obsession, composing music. He didn't want to drill words anymore. Every minute that he spent studying spelling was a minute that he wasn't composing. But I was still rabid spelling bee mom. He had won the regional bee and qualified for the national bee again, and I insisted that he continue studying for the next 2 months and finish the season out by competing at the national bee. I, like Bill, believed that he had to finish what he had begun. He grudgingly put in the time and studied, but his heart wasn't in it. He made it to the semifinals again, but only lasted a couple of rounds at that level. It was a hard lesson for both of us, but an important one. In the final months of our spelling bee journey, I stopped listening to my son and pushed him to fulfill my needs, the ones that hark all the way back to the 4th grade and the 8th grade, and fill my needs and expectations instead of respecting his right to choose how to spend his time. Exposed to this understanding, finally, rabid spelling bee mom shriveled up and disappeared. I'm now free of my spelling demons, for which I will be forever grateful and a much better mom. Thank you.